What I want to start out by saying is a humongous thank you to every single one of you. We had nearly 5,000 people register for this course. And so whether you're attending live or you're attending via the recording, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining together to learn about this topic of interoception. I've been studying this topic for 9 years now. And when I started learning about interoception, there wasn't many people really even talking about it. There was really brilliant neuroscientists studying interoception in their research labs. And at that point in time, there wasn't a lot looking at exactly how this brilliant interoception science practically applies to our lives. And so that's really what I've dedicated a large part of my work to, translating that interoception science and helping to understand how does it practically apply to our lives? How does interoception influence everything that we do all day long? How does it influence our children's lives? How does it influence our clients' lives? And we have learned a lot over the last 9 years. We've had a lot of wins. We've had a lot of mistakes. We've made a lot of mistakes. And that's what I wanted to come together and offer this course as a summary of the things that we've learned. Of course, I can't fit 9 years worth of learning into the next hour, but I did my best to try to share with you as much as I could what we have learned about the best practices for implementing interoception-based supports. I, of course, have to acknowledge and thank my clients and their families. They are my best teachers. And my past clients, my current clients, there's so many are so willing to vulnerably share their inner experiences and also willing to tell me when I'm dead wrong. And so I've learned so much from them and so much from our community, whether it's in our Facebook group, the Interoception Facebook group, from emails from so many of you from all around the world. So I just have to say a big thank you. Feeling really inspired today by the response of this course and interest in the topic of interoception. Just a couple logistics. First, I'm Kelly Mahler. I am an occupational therapist by trade. I'm a passionate OT, if you know my work. I have authored 12 different resources, many of which are on the topic of interoception. And I also am actively involved in a lot of different interoception-based research projects. Your handouts for today. We sent handouts. They were emailed to you 24 hours before the start of this course, and then also 1 hour before the start of today's session. And then I also believe we sent another email 5 minutes before we started. So if you're having any trouble finding the handouts, they are on the email that you clicked that had the Zoom link. So if you're here live, that email also has the handouts. If you're here in the recording, the handouts are included in that email that we sent with the link to the recording. If you're wondering about the recording, you're here live, you want to know maybe when you can get access to that recording, it will be coming in the next 24 hours. Just the general format of the live session will be approximately about 60 to 75 minutes of content. And then the final piece of this is live Q&A. I have amazing team members here supporting, one of which is Allison, and Allison will be joining me and we'll be doing a live Q&A. So if you have questions as we go about today, please put them in the Q&A box. There's Allison waving. Thanks, Allison. So Allison will be monitoring the Q&A. You can click on the little Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and it should open up into a box and you can put your questions in there, and then she will be asking me the questions at the end today. I have amazing team members here today. We have Allison, we have Zach, we have Barb, all with little support behind their names, so that if you need anything, please feel free to send a message to them in the chat. You can click the the little menu at the bottom of the chat. Click the little drop-down menu and you can click on one of their names if you have any tech or logistic questions. So before we start with the content, I just wanted to offer a gentle content or trigger warning. This topic we're talking about interoception. And interoception is all about how your body feels. And so by nature of the topic, this topic will naturally invite you to reflect upon your inner experience. We will also probably mention trauma as we go about our course today. And so please participate in this course in a way that meets your comfort level. We're going to be assuming that you're doing so. And if you need to step away, the good news is you have access to the recording, so you can revisit it at a later time. I also we will discuss in this course a compliance-based model. And compliance-based models tend to rule our society. And I have to apologize for my slides. I have no idea why they keep forwarding on. So apologies about that. I'll fix that in a minute if it's not fixed. So these compliance-based approaches, they rule our society. Many times we are raised to ignore the way our body feels in order to comply with the demands of life, whether that's getting a job done, or it's listening to a rule, or in many times in the field of neurodiversity, many times our learners are subject to more formal compliance-based approaches where they many times are forced to ignore what their body is telling them that they need to feel safe and regulated in order to earn a reinforcer or please other people. So we're going to be talking about these compliance-based approaches and suggesting a shift in the way that we do things as a society in general, and a shift towards an interoception-based approach where we feel a little freer to listen to our bodies and honor what our body needs in that moment for comfort and to help our body feel regulated. I just want you to know that if you are someone that has used a compliance-based approach in the past, or you or your child has been subject to compliance-based approaches, please know you're not alone. I even share in this fault. I have used compliance-based approaches with my own children. And so please know that you're not alone. And I think just what is important is that we continue to learn and grow together, that we take what is emerging in science and research, we take what we're learning from voices of lived experience, and we continue to get better. And part of being better is to shift to this interoception-based model of approach. And I do have to say that our interoception supports are offering so much hope, so many positive outcomes, and really undoing the compliance training that many of us have been a part of. One last thing is that I just want to validate your inner experience. Your inner experience is always correct and valid. There are no wrong interoception experiences. What your body feels like when you need food is different than what my body feels like when I need food. What your body feels like when you need sleep, different than what my body needs or feels like when I need sleep. What your body feels like when you're anxious, different than what my body feels like when I'm anxious. And we are both correct in our inner experience. There's also no wrong way to express or describe your inner sensations. We all have very different ways of expressing or describing that inner experience. Again, we are all correct and valid in that. Another thing that we've learned about, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is it's okay to not know how you feel. That is a more common experience than many experts give credit to. It's okay to not know how you feel. And what we're learning is that it can be really helpful for all of us to get clearer on how our body is feeling. It has many advantages, but it's okay. This is messy, it's complicated. Learning about the way your body feels can be really challenging, for myself included. It's also okay to not want to feel. And so what we mean by that is not wanting to feel or not feeling, shutting off from your body is a very protective strategy. It's a really smart strategy for many people. their body can feel like a very overwhelming place to be, whether maybe it's chronic dysregulation and you have this like frequent stress response, or perhaps you have experienced trauma in the past and your body feels like a really unsafe place. So out of protection, you may have just completely what people call dissociate or separate from your body and shut off your feelings, and that is protective. What this interoception work is all about is offering a second strategy, the option to start to feel your body if you choose to. And lastly, it is okay to not want to share how you feel with other people. And I think that's important, especially as we're talking about compliance. This interoception work is always an invitation to participate. It's never a demand that we're placing on someone that they have to complete in order to get access to a reinforcer. It is okay to not want to share how you feel with other people, and that should be our right. Okay, so just some important concepts for the course. What is interoception? I know we all have probably different places. We're all at different places in our interoception journey. So interoception is a sense within our bodies. Just like all of our other senses, we have a set of receptors located within our body for interoception. And interoception is, our receptors for interoception are located in all of our major organs. So you have receptors for interoception in your heart, your lungs, your stomach, your colon, your bladder, your skin, your muscles, your bones. You have interoception receptors in your mouth, up in your nose, in the whites of your eyeballs. These receptors are located extensively throughout your body, and these receptors are monitoring the condition of your body. How is your body feeling in that present moment? So those receptors pulling in information about the condition of your body. So like, for example, the receptors in your stomach, pulling in information about how your stomach is feeling, or what is the condition of your stomach? Is it full? Is it empty? Is it gassy? Is it nauseous? Does it maybe have like a tingly, like butterfly feeling in your stomach? So those receptors pulling in information about how your body is feeling. All of this information is processed in many areas of your brain. The biggest area is the insula. Your insula is your interoception center of your brain, and your insula is using these incoming messages about how the condition of your body, how is your body feeling, as clues to your emotions or what you need in that moment to feel comfort. So these receptors monitoring the condition of your body. So let's use the example of the stomach again. Maybe those receptors pulling in information that your stomach feels empty. Your insula can use that as a clue that you need to eat, or maybe it's a clue that you are hungry, that emotion of hunger, or maybe your stomach is having that tingly butterfly feeling in your stomach, and your insula uses that as a clue that you are feeling anxious. So our body is constantly giving us information about what it needs for regulation and comfort. So that is the biggest job of interoception. It has many jobs, but the biggest job of interoception is to provide us with information about how our body feels and what we need for comfort and regulation. Another important concept for this course, and I may say this multiple times, so just a disclaimer, but it's so important that we all have unique interoception experiences. What your body feels like in a certain situation, different than what my body feels like. So this work is not about teaching someone to have a typical or average interoception experience. It's not about telling someone how to feel. It is all about helping each learner discover for themselves how they are uniquely feeling. And what we know is that we all have a very different range of how aware we are of the feelings in our body. And some of us are more aware, some of us are less aware. Again, there's no wrong here. We know that on the this realm of awareness, that for some of us, our body signals can be really big. They can be big, they can feel strong, they can feel overpowering. Some of us might notice a lot of different body signals in our body at once, and it can make it really difficult to know what exactly to pay attention to. Or else, for some of us, maybe we have one or two body sensations that are really big and overpowering. And so I'm supporting a client right now that he can feel his meals digesting, moving through his digestive system after every meal. Like that's a really big body signal, and that can be really distracting for him. On the other hand, we know that for some of us, our body signals can be the opposite end of that extreme. Our body signals can be really small. And in this case, for some of us, maybe our body signals, we just completely miss body signals. Like we might not ever notice the signs in our body that our body needs food or our body needs sleep. We might not ever notice the feelings of building overwhelm. And so we just might completely miss body signals. Or we might notice body signals, but only when they're at a really intense place. So we miss all those little body signals telling us when we're just getting a little thirsty, a little hungry, a little overwhelmed, and we don't notice those sensations until they're really intense in our body. So we don't notice that we're in a meltdown or getting overwhelmed until we're in a meltdown, or we don't notice that we're getting hungry until we are hangry. That's what my teenage clients call it, when you're so hungry, like you're irritable, you're feeling horrible in your body. And so we know that these IA extremes exist, and we are all very different in how aware we are of the way our body feels. And then to make matters even more complicated, how aware we are of our body signals can vary between each of our emotions or body needs. So for example, this little girl, her body signals telling her when she was getting anxious or hungry were too small. She was relying on her caregivers to remind her to eat on a daily basis, to monitor signs of distress so that they could step in and offer co-regulation to her. Then for physical exertion, her body signals were clear to her. She knew when she had enough active play, and she would take a break when her body needed it. For the need to urinate, her body signals were a little bit towards the too small side. So she was fully independent in toileting during the day, but she did have some nighttime bladder leakage. And so that feeling wasn't strong enough to wake her out of sleep. And then on the other hand, for pain, her body signals were really big. And so like minor injuries, or like things we would categorize as minor injuries, would just be a really big deal for her. She would feel that pain in such a big way. It wasn't her being dramatic. It wasn't her being attention seeking, which I do not like that term at all. This was a real sensory experience for her. She felt that pain in such a big way. And so this is true for all of us. We have different sliding scales of how aware we are of different body signals indicating what our body needs. And so why is interoception-based work so important, right? Interoception is the foundation of so many aspects of life, more than I can talk about here today. But understanding your inner sensations can provide you with really valuable information about what your body needs, like what your body needs for comfort in that moment, what your body needs for health. Like noticing symptoms, medical symptoms in our body can be really important to help us meet our health needs, right? And it also has such implications to well-being, mental health, positive social connections, etc. So what exactly are interoception-based supports? This course is assuming that you might have some prior knowledge about interoception-based supports, because we want to talk about, as the course title implies, how do we implement these supports? But for those of you that might be new to this, just really quickly, like what are interoception-based supports? What they are intended or designed to do are three different things: to help a person begin to playfully notice the way their body feels. So noticing those interoceptive signals, noticing them in playful ways. Then we want to help them, each learner, to, I'm noticing this feeling. What does this feeling mean to me? So increasing that self-understanding of your own personal inner sensations, and then also finally helping that learner to connect to strategies that promote comfort within their body. Like, what does their body need in those moments to feel safe and to feel regulated? Interoception-based supports do not seek to fix deficits. Remember, there is no such thing as an interoception deficit per se. We are trying to help each learner discover more about their own personal inner experience. These supports do not seek to help someone look more typical. They are not a behavior modification strategy. They're an empowerment strategy. Many times people experience more successful self-regulation as a result of learning more about their inner experience. But this is not done in order to modify a person's behavior or to discover the right way to feel. And these supports are never a forced compliance. It is something, it's never a demand that is placed on a person. It's always presented as an invitation to participate. And we'll talk about why that's so important to the interoception process in a little bit. But just a couple more things about these interoception-based supports. What we know from existing research right now is that currently the only evidence-based intervention shown to enhance our IA experience or interoceptive awareness experience is something called body mindfulness. And body mindfulness is just our ability to notice the way our body feels in the present moment. And so I just want to say this one more time. The existing research, the only evidence-based intervention thus far shown to enhance interoceptive awareness is body mindfulness, or noticing how your body feels in the present moment. And we're really working hard to move this work forward in evidence-based ways. And I've read articles written by other professionals out there that says, like, gentle swinging increases interoceptive awareness, or deep touch pressure increases interoceptive awareness. That is not true. There's no evidence showing that is the case. Maybe clinically, that might be an experience for someone, but we're really trying hard to stay focused on the evidence and move this forward in an evidence-based way so that we can keep pace and be taken seriously when we're suggesting a shift away from compliance and to an interoception-based approach. So if you're someone that has tried mindfulness, please don't panic. I've seen a lot of panicked faces when I say, oh, it's only body mindfulness, because if you're anything like me, I think about like my own children. I think about my own clients. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like body mindfulness for me, I have a fully developed adult brain and it's really hard. So I think about it in terms of my clients, my own children. I'm like, oh my gosh, like body mindfulness seems like an impossible match for where they are at currently. So fear not. What we have done is we have adapted body mindfulness. And that's because traditional forms of body mindfulness, they're really abstract. Like they're inviting you to pay attention to how your body feels. And many times you're invited to attend to something that you can't see, you can't feel. Like that's really abstract, like noticing the way your heart feels. Also, traditional forms of body mindfulness require a lot of attention, which is really challenging for a lot of the clients that I serve. And traditional mindfulness, lastly, it really assumes that you have a safe relationship with your body. And that is not the case for so many people. People that are chronically dysregulated, inviting them to pay attention to their body is probably not a very motivating experience. Also, if you have experienced trauma, again, your body might not feel like a very safe place to be. And so inviting someone to pay attention to that is really a mismatch for where they're at. So my colleagues and I are really working hard at adapting body mindfulness to make them more accessible and successful for a wider variety of people. And so these strategies are called IA builders. These are our interoception-based supports. So some of the ways we're adapting body mindfulness, we're chunking it into one body part at a time. So inviting a learner to notice how one body part feels at a time. So noticing the way their hands feel or noticing the way their feet feel. We're also doing a lot of play-based ways of evoking stronger feelings in the body to help capture attention. And so like maybe it's squeezing a stress ball and noticing the way your hands feel when you're doing that. And so we have a lot of language supports, visual supports embedded in our work. And we, again, I probably say this a lot, but we're very playful in what we're offering. So I just wanted to give you a hint of one of my favorite IA builders. These are called focus area experiments. And what these strategies, these focus area experiments are all about evoking a stronger feeling within a body part in a safe and playful way to give practice noticing how that body part feels. And also, if you're taking it one step further, you might be describing it or matching it to an interoception word. How are my hands feeling in this moment? How is my mouth feeling in this moment? And so some examples of these focus area experiments for hands, I was just taking pictures the other day. So number one here, the picture number one is a client of mine picking beads out of a little bowl of ice and noticing the way that her hands felt when she did that. And then we added water, and we invited her to notice, how did her hands feel when we added water? Was it different? And then we had some frozen grapes that we were playing with and eating, and how did her hands feel when she was holding a frozen grape? We were playing with ice packs and noticing the way her hands felt. We were playing with hand warmers. So we were working on noticing when your hands can feel cold or hot. And then we had a mystery grab bag where we put some ice packs and hand warmers in, and she was playfully reaching in, and we would be like, okay, grab something that makes your hand feel warm. And she would grab something out of the mystery bag. But all of these activities were playful. They were an invitation to participate. She was not required to do these things. And it gave her practice noticing the way her hands felt. And she was a client of mine that was also bringing in the language piece of describing it. So her words of, how did her hands feel during these different experiments? So if you're someone looking for focus area experiments, we have a free, awesome resource on my website. It's called the Interoception Daily Activity List, and it gives you 15 different menus of different focus area experiments. They're each categorized into one body part at a time. So we have different focus area experiments that are probably naturally occurring in your daily schedules that can be really great ways to help someone to begin to notice the way their body feels. So like for hands, when you're washing your hands can be a great time to invite a learner to notice the way their hands are feeling. So if you want some free ideas out there, this activity list might be of use to you. We also have some other resources that provide a lot of different focus area experiments. So we have our interoception yoga cards. We have 134 cards. So, but you don't need these cards to use interoception as a focus area experiment. So think about, if you're someone that's using yoga, shifting yoga from assuming a pose to noticing the way your body feels during the pose. And if you want to be even more specific, noticing the way a certain body part feels during that yoga pose. Same thing for exercise. We have a set of 124 interoception exercise cards, but you can do this for free on your own without the cards. If you're someone using exercise, shifting from doing the exercise to noticing how your body feels while you're doing your exercise. I mean, think of all of the sensations that might be evoked or made stronger during yoga, during exercise. And that is what our focus area experiments are all about, evoking a stronger feeling within the body to give practice noticing and describing. We also, if that's not enough ideas for you, we get asked this so many times. So we have interoception activity cards, which provides 170 focus area experiments. We also have 200 focus area experiments in the interoception curriculum. But hopefully that some of the free ideas get you started. So what are some best practices when using focus area experiments or other IA builders that we have out there? These are our 8 best practices. We've learned a lot more than 8, but when trying to summarize and put this all together, we came up with these 8 most important things that we've learned. And so the first 3 occur before we even start using IA builders. So step 1 is we really need to be sure that we're promoting feelings of regulation and safety. And so how or what are we doing here? What does that mean? So we are using co-regulation. So co-regulation is where as the supporter, we are stepping in and offering comfort. And that comfort is non-contingent. What does that mean? That comfort does not need to be earned. That comfort is just offered as an effort of co-regulation and helping that person to feel safe and regulated throughout their daily lives. So how can we do that? So number one, know that learner and know what their body needs to be regulated. So think about these questions, like what do you know about the learner? What sensory input is regulating? And how do you offer that in a proactive way? Do they have enough support and predictability in their environments, in their lives? Do they know what to expect? Also thinking about their behavior and what is their behavior currently revealing about how their body is feeling. If you recall, I said we all have different ways of expressing the way our body feels. And so really thinking about quote unquote behavior and what could that be saying about the way that person's body is feeling? What are they communicating to us? Could they possibly be in pain? Could they possibly be in sensory pain? Could they possibly be feeling dysregulated? So thinking about that. Also, we want to be considering the environment and how can we ensure that the environment is a place that promotes this feeling of regulation and safety. So really thinking about what in the environment could be causing distress or sensory pain. And then finally, thinking about how we are offering our comfort. I think many times, especially the work I do in the schools, we tend to be very reactive. We wait until that student is having or on their way to having a meltdown, and then we step in and offer comfort. But how do we do a better job of being more proactive, of offering that comfort, that regulation throughout their entire daily life and routines? So that comfort offered proactively. We also can still offer it reactively, but that comfort is embedded in their daily schedule. It's never withheld. They never have to earn comfort, and they never have to request it appropriately. Like if you have an IEP, if you see an IEP goal out there that says that the student will request a sensory strategy or request a break appropriately, really consider that goal. Like, what does that mean? And who gets to determine what appropriately requesting it means? If someone needs comfort, they should be able to get comfort no matter what. Okay, and then why is it so important to promote these feelings of regulation and safety? Like, think about the body experience. If you want to invite your learners to start to notice the way their body feels, okay? They need to feel safe in their environment to be able to shift their attention from outside from the environment to shift their attention to their body. And if their environment feels really unsafe, their attention is likely going to be pulled to their environment, right? They're going to be most likely hypervigilant on their environment, scanning, waiting, watching for that next insult to their neurology, that next time that they get a stress response, that next thing in the environment that creates that stress response in their body. And so that's why it's so important to consider the environment and to promote those feelings of safety in the environment so that they have the attentional resources to tune within. Also, you need to be able to feel safe in your body in order to be motivated or to want to pay attention. So again, that's why this co-regulation is so important before we start any interoception-based work to help that person to feel regulated in their environment and within their body so that they feel safe enough and have the attentional resources to shift their attention to their body. Okay, number 2, develop a mutual relationship. Like, it is our primary job, in my opinion, to help our learners feel safe with us. And how do we do that? Nurturing that equal relationship, it does not involve one person that's in power and one person that is underneath that person. It is not a domination, you must do what I say, listen to me, I'm in charge kind of relationship. It's more mutual, where we are seeking to meet that person on the same level. We are trying our best to discover their experience, to discover their whys and their inner experience, and really thinking deeply, like if you're supporting clients or maybe your own child, perhaps you're supporting some learners that can't share their inner experience. And so we really need to think carefully about our observations, our detective work, and think deeply about what you're observing, those observable behaviors. I see this again, my work in the schools. These students, they get labeled, oh, that's an escape avoidance behavior. Like, okay, but why? But why? Why does that student want to avoid the task or avoid you or avoid this environment? That learner could be giving us extremely valuable information if we can think even more deeply about that. Maybe it's that they're noticing that something is causing discomfort interoceptively in their body, and they're doing something actively to protect their body from what's making them feel unsafe and uncomfortable, right? So really looking at that through an interoception lens, and what could that person be expressing or sharing about their inner experience. Also, that label, I already said I don't like it, attention seeking. Maybe that learner is, again, noticing discomfort within their body. They're noticing that their body has a need, and they're actively seeking a solution for that. But we come out of the gate with these compliance-based models, labeling their behavior as if it's problematic. And it's actually, many times, these are solutions for our students. So thinking a lot deeper in a mutual way about how to gain a better understanding of our learners. And so why is that mutual relationship, that our attempts at being able to understand their experience, so important? If our learner feels safe with us, it creates a space where that learner might have more resources to shift their attention within. We talked about that, but they also might want to try activities. These interoception activities might be really hard. Tuning back into their body, noticing the way their body feel, that's new. That could be really hard. And they might be more willing to take a chance if we're there with them in a mutual way. And then the final consideration before even starting any IA work is to be trauma informed. You really need to understand trauma if you're going to be using interoception-based supports, and how can you reduce the likelihood of re-traumatization. There's amazing free resources out there on the web to seek to be more trauma informed. You really need to begin to understand what can re-traumatize. There's so many possible solutions, but many times my clients that feel unseen, unheard, that's really re-traumatizing for them. When they don't have a choice, when we're using these punitive, coercive practices like compliance-based models, all many times can be traumatizing or re-traumatizing. So I gave you a really great resource here on this slide, and seeking out more free resources and inform yourself on trauma care. And we also have a free blog on interoception and trauma, as well as a free, we call it vlog, but it's a video about this topic. And then if you choose, you can take an even deeper dive into the topic of interoception and trauma. And we have a 2-hour on-demand course. So why is it important to be trauma informed? We know that trauma causes or creates IA extremes. In fact, there's some trauma experts that state that almost every single person that has experienced trauma has some form of an IA extreme. So if we are not open, or if we're not operating in a trauma-informed manner, we might run the risk of actually going against what we're seeking to do with interoception work. We might be creating more IA extremes, rather than helping that person to become more clear on their inner experience. Okay, next best practice. This is when we start using the IA builders. Invite participation. And interoception supports are always presented as an invitation to participate. And how do we do that? I'm sorry, I think I skipped a slide. So how do we do that? So invite, not demand. This work is never presented like offering, for example, that focus area experiment of doing the fun bead game in the ice. That was never presented as first then, like, you must do this activity with me and then you can get a reward. It was an invitation to participate. If that learner does not want to participate with you, we get emails quite frequently saying like, well, the learner doesn't want to do the focus area experiments, or they're not interested in the body check chart. Then consider some of the following questions, like why and what do we need to do to adapt the work to inspire a person's participation? Do we need to go back to some of the best practices that I already mentioned? Do we need to go back and make sure that they're feeling regulated in their body and use more proactive co-regulation? Maybe they're not motivated to start to notice the way their body feels because they still feel very unsafe in their body. Do we need to spend more time on developing that mutual relationship so that learner feels safe with us? Are we presenting the supports in a way that is fun and playful and is inviting to that specific learner? Are we presenting them in a way that's a match for their learning style? Like, do we need to increase the visual supports? Do we need to increase the predictability? Do we need to explain more of the why behind this fun interoception work? So really thinking critically about how we can change the way we're presenting it, rather than putting it on the learner and saying, well, they're just refusing to participate. Ask yourself why. Like, what could you do to inspire more participation? And this is really important because giving someone the choice and autonomy over their body is critical to interoception growth. And when we are inviting and not requiring participation, you are giving choice. You are giving that person autonomy over their body. You're giving them that choice to want to feel or not to feel their body. And that is so important. So if you're demanding participation, you're doing the exact opposite of what this interoception work is all about. And so really thinking about building that mutual alliance and establishing trust and inviting participation in a way that feels safe to that person. Okay, next best practice is be curious. Seek to understand a person's inner experience rather than assuming to know. And I know I alluded to the many mistakes that I have made in the past. And this is one of the biggest ones that, I did spend a lot of time in my early OT career assuming that I knew what my clients were feeling. And I'll be the first to admit it. And that really led me down some paths of providing supports that were completely not meaningful to my clients at all, but yet I had no idea. I was completely clueless. And I still know that I am learning on a daily basis. And what we're presenting here in this course will probably be different in a year from now, in 10 years from now. It's that continual growth and shifting. But this curiosity is so important. And compliance models assume to know a person's experience. They're like, yep, they're doing that because they are escape avoiding the task. Or maybe it's even looser than that. They're doing that on purpose because they're oppositional and defiant. They have oppositional defiant disorder. So we really need to be more curious, including myself. And I encourage you, if you want to learn more about this, review some of the research that has been done by Damon Milton. Amazing researcher, autistic researcher. And he talks a lot about the double empathy problem and how many times when we have two different neurotypes, we can both fail to understand each other's experience. And so, my neurotype, I am not autistic, and I have deficits in understanding the experience of my autistic clients, and I need to recognize that. And so rather than assuming I understand their experience, I need to get better at being more curious as to what could potentially be going on for them. So whenever possible, and I'm supporting a client that can answer questions, I use a lot of questions in my work. Just being more curious rather than saying like, oh gosh, it looks like you're upset right now. Shifting that to like, can you tell me more about that? Or what is going on right now for you? Non-judgmentally seeking to understand, how does this make your body feel? What do you think about this? And I didn't mean to allude to the fact that I'm not asking these questions in a meltdown. Meltdown is not a time for investigation. A meltdown is a time for us to step in and offer that comfort and non-contingent support. But really after the fact, really trying to understand my client's experience when their body's feeling comfortable, when it's feeling uncomfortable, seeking to understand through lots and lots of questions. Also really avoiding labeling that person's emotions. Like I said, really coming in saying, things I've said in the past, just gonna admit again, gosh, looks like you're getting a little upset right now. What can I do to help? That's labeling their emotion. That's me assuming that I know it's happening. Or gosh, that must have made you feel really sad. So again, coming in and labeling the way that I assume their experience could be. Shifting to more curiosity, like, ooh, I see your hands are squeezing right now. What's going on? Or I see you jumping up and down right now. How does your body feel? So just really shifting to more of a place of curiosity rather than assuming to know. And really seeking to understand those observable behaviors through an interoception lens. So could possibly what we see happening be due in part to an IA extreme? So maybe that self-injurious behavior is an effort to block out some form of pain within that person's body. Maybe it's sensory pain from the overwhelming noises around them. Maybe it's a undiagnosed medical issue, like a cavity or some kind of digestive issue, and they're trying to block out that pain. So really thinking about it through an interoception lens, or looking at bowel leakage as potentially missing that feeling of needing to poop, that learner is not purposefully having bowel accidents at school to be oppositional. And I can't even make that story up. That is a recent referral that I got from a team looking at a 10-year-old autistic girl, and they're creating a behavior plan for her purposeful pooping behaviors at school. And the pediatrician actually also validated the team and saying, yes, her bowel issues are behavioral in nature. Like that to me is not rooted in the most current science. That little girl, there could be a lot of different things happening. First of all, with poop, it's very complicated, but one of the things, you have to feel the need to poop in order to give yourself enough information to take care of your body's needs, to get yourself to a toilet. And so looking at that through an interoception lens can help us to be more curious and build more empathy. If you're looking for a more structured way of being curious, of figuring out some of the questions to ask, we have the Comprehensive Assessment of Interoceptive Awareness. The 3rd edition, it's new, it's improved, it's so much better, but I'm going to say that it still has a lot of flaws, and we're going to continue to get better. But the 3rd edition just released this week. You can get more information on my website, but we have 3 subtests to help build that curiosity and seek to understand that person's inner experience. So why is this curiosity so important? I already mentioned much of it, but it helps us get closer to understanding the learner's true experience. And it really can help us gain insights that are a match for what that learner truly needs. And it also helps our learners feel seen and heard and better understood. So many of our learners that can report their experience feel extremely misunderstood by many people around them. Okay, next best practice that we have learned is to honor and validate the learner's inner experience, even when it's really different than what we might experience. I've heard a lot of very unexpected reflections about how my client's body is feeling during different activities, and I'm so glad that I'm a very curious person, and that just from day one, we were honoring and validating anything that our learners were sharing with us, even if it was very different than what was expected. And we've come to find out in many, many different situations that we all have these different inner experiences. So if we were all together in a room, which I cannot wait to be together in in a room learning together, but if we were all doing the same focus area experiment, like if I passed out one of those ice packs to all of you and invited you to notice and tell me how your hands were feeling, we would hear so many different experiences and responses. Okay, and there's no wrong way to feel. And I think when we do this work together in groups, it can concretely show our learners that there is no wrong way, that we are all very different. When I'm using interoception-based supports, I prefer doing it in groups if possible, because it really does concretely show how different we are. And when we validate responses that might be different than what we expect, many times it leads us to very important insights about that person. So for example, I was working with a 7-year-old client, and we were doing an experiment where he rested his hands on his lap, and we were doing this all together, so with his family. And so we were all trying to keep our hands as still as possible for 20 seconds. And so I was watching him, and he was working so hard, and his hands were completely still, unmoving. And we asked him, like, how did your hands feel when you were doing that? And he said, my hands felt wiggly. And if I went off of what I was observing, his observable behavior, quote unquote, I would have said, no, your hands did not look wiggly. I mean, they were completely unmoving. But because we find it so important, and it's a best practice to honor and validate each person's experience, we validate it. We're like, that's an awesome word, Kyle. Your hands felt wiggly. And so we followed up with a question, because he was a client that could give me a little bit more. And so I said, you said your hands are wiggly. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And he said, well, that's the way the inside of my body feels all day long. And his mom and I looked at each other, and we were like, oh my gosh, because that insight, it might seem really small, but in the big picture, the big context of what was happening with Kyle, it was a big deal. Because what was happening with Kyle, he was at school, and he was like, you know, what a compliance person would say, picture perfect student. He would sit in his desk, he would follow the rules, he would do his work, and then he would get home at the end of the day, and he would be in a meltdown all night long. And so that little insight telling us that's the way his body felt wiggly all day long, even though he was working so hard at school to hold it together, to mask the way his body felt, that it was no wonder he had a hard time at night. He was exhausted. He was exhausted from hiding his inner experience. And so just that little insight that he was able to share gave us more information to go back and provide better supports for him at school, more proactive regulation breaks to help him feel more regulated at school. So why is this honoring and validating so important? It really helps us to celebrate the uniqueness of our human experience. And in terms of the learner, many times they need a lot of reassurance that what they feel is correct. And I think very good intentions, myself has been included in this group in the past, that we might have been accidentally teaching that feeling is one way. So for example, we might teach like sad is a low arousal or low energy feeling. Anxiety is a really high level feeling, okay? We might be teaching that, and that might not have been a true match for what that learner's original experience was, and that can become really confusing. Like when they get sad, that might be like, I have clients that when they get sad, they get really high energy. Or I have clients that when they start to get anxious, they completely shut down. They don't have a lot of energy. They have, like, their energy just dissipates. They are in shut down. And so there's a lot of confusion. And when someone's teaching you about the way emotions should be or the way your feelings should be, and it's not a match for your experience, that can get really messy. And so really reassuring our learners that what they're noticing, what they're feeling is correct. And also in terms of the supporter, how this benefits us. When we are honoring and validating, even when it's against what we expect, we gain a lot of really important insights that might be helpful, like the Kyle situation, at delivering and offering meaningful supports. Okay, so the next best practice is to adapt our supports to maximize success and access. There are infinite ways of adapting our IA builders. We wrote the interoception curriculum in an effort to provide people with a framework for using IA builders. We were hearing from so many people that these IA builders are so new. They really wanted to start using them, but they need to know, like, what do I do first? What do I do second? What do I do third? So we did our best at putting together a framework for people to follow. But the ways to adapt the curriculum are, like I said, infinite. The ways to adapt the IA builders that are a part of the curriculum. So please don't feel as if there are rules when using IA builders. There's these best practices that we are presenting, but in terms of how to adapt these strategies, please think about what would be a match for each of your learners. So really just consider, like, what promotes your learner's success in other areas, and then apply that information to interoception. So if you know your learner benefits from a lot of visual supports, then increase the amount of visual supports that you're offering during this work. We have a lot of visual supports that come with the curriculum, but maybe your learner needs even more. Maybe they need a visual schedule. Maybe they need a choice board, a visual choice board of which focus area experiments they want to do. If the learner benefits from including their favorite character, then please include their favorite character in your interoception play. We gave one of the free handouts that came exclusively with this course, and I hope this is really helpful to a lot of you, just some tips on how to adapt the interoception curriculum or these IA builders. We gave quite a few ideas on there. This is one of our biggest questions that we hear from so many people, like, what are some ideas of how to adapt it? So we have some ideas of adapting this work for clients that are non-speakers, or we have some that target, like, if you have a learner that needs a lot of repetition, or maybe you have a learner that needs a lot of predictability. So how can you adapt some of this work to meet their needs? So please check that out if you feel like that would be helpful to you. So why is it important to adapt these supports? Interoception-based supports are important for everyone. And there are, I said this already twice before, but there are infinite ways to adapt it. So we just encourage you to be creative and expect wins and failures. I wish everything was a win, but sometimes I get so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have the best idea ever. And then I try it with a client and it's a complete failure. I don't know how many times that happens to you out there. Or I think it's like something's a really awesome idea for one of my daughters. And then I'm like, hey, I have this idea. And they're like, no way, mom. So, expect wins, expect failures, learn from your mistakes. And all that being said, when you're adapting, at least please try to stay true to the best practices that we're presenting today. And then our final best practice is to be playful and have fun. Our IA work is designed to be enjoyable, and we're even playing with our adult clients. And I'm always considering, like, what does the learner that's in front of me enjoy? How do they enjoy playing? And then I use that information to guide how I present our IA builders. Like, so if I know one of my clients loves science, then we're going to be highly scientific, and we're going to form hypothesis about how certain focus area experiments might make our hands feel before doing them. Like, we really incorporate their their love, their enjoyment. If they love animals, then we might have an animal theme across all of our focus area experiments. Like they might have to we might invite them to run across the room and capture all the stuffed animals and run them to safety and notice how their feet are feeling while they're running their animals to safety. Or how does their lungs feel after they're done running the animals to safety? Or how do their hands feel when they're holding the stuffed animal? So incorporating their love and their enjoyment into this work. And why is this so important? I don't want to downplay the seriousness of interoception-based supports. We are having very significant positive outcomes in the research that we're doing, but we don't want to lose sight of what I'm all about as an OT is play and being fun. And we don't want to lose sight of that, and being playful and enjoying something really helps us keep us going, especially on the days when it's hard. I have some days where listening and tuning into my body is really hard work. And then there's other days where it's a little easier. And interoception work it's a daily effort for most of us. And so when we can make this a little bit more fun and playful, it feels a little bit less daunting on a daily basis. So before turning it over to your questions, I just really wanted to quickly share 7 lessons that we have learned on our interoception journey. I provided this in your second course handout. Hopefully this handout is helpful to you as well. So first of all, we mentioned this before, that there's no wrong way to feel. And I feel like we have to say these things out loud explicitly. We're really overcoming a lot of past understandings. So there's no wrong way to feel. We're all very unique and different. We all have unique ways of describing and expressing our inner experiences. So really we need to get better at understanding each other. Labeling another person's emotions is often not helpful. We talked about the double empathy problem. It's really difficult for us to accurately understand each other's inner experiences. So rather than label, just be more curious and really just seek to gain insights and understand that person's experience. I recently filmed an interoception panel with 4 autistic adults, and I was just the lucky, honored moderator of their panel. And they all submitted the questions that they wanted me to ask during this panel discussion. And I thought it was really interesting that all 4 of them submitted a question on the experience of other people labeling how they felt growing up, and how they all were not a fan of that strategy. So really thinking, and I am gonna say it, but I have done this before. I've labeled my children's emotions, my husband's emotions, my client's emotions. I still catch myself sometimes doing this. This is a really big shift in the way that I was trained as an OT. So really nurturing more curiosity rather than assuming to know. Another thing that we're really working on is using emotion words with caution. We throw around a lot of emotion words, and many times emotion words might have little meaning to some people. Our interoceptive sensations give meaning to emotion words. And so there's some research, I don't want to take too much time talking about that, but the way our body feels is how we begin to understand these emotion words. Like, what does excited mean to me? The way my body feels is what gives concrete meaning to that word. Or what does calm mean? The way my body feels gives concrete meaning. And so many times we throw these words around, and many of our learners don't really have concrete understanding, but yet we don't realize that. So instead of starting with emotion words, I know we start so young, start with body signals and noticing, how does your stomach feel right now? Or how do your hands feel right now? Or how does your skin feel right now? And really starting with the body signal level first. And also I want to say about emotion words, if that is not your instinct to use emotion words, that's okay too. You might have a different way of sorting out your inner body signals, and that is a-okay. So you might notice a feeling in your body, and that pattern means that you need food. You don't necessarily have to label it with an emotion word if that's not your experience. Lesson 5, not knowing how you feel is okay. And not knowing how you feel is more universal than most experts give credit for. When I first started this work, I was like, my gosh, do some people like clearly know exactly how they feel on a like minute to minute basis? And that might actually be, or you might be super clear on how you feel at all times. But I was not. My interoception work has been a personal journey for me as well. And but what we've learned in our work is that not knowing how you feel is a very common experience. Is it helpful to get clearer on how you feel? Yes. But is it really helpful to recognize the fact that this stuff is messy and hard and not perfect? Yes. At least for many of my clients, it's extremely helpful to recognize that this is hard stuff. Okay, next lesson, 6, not wanting to feel is okay. I mentioned this in the beginning, but not feeling, shutting off from how our body feels is a very protective strategy. We are not trying to take that away from someone. We are just adding to that strategy, offering them the opportunity to add the choice to tune in, to notice the way their body feels, so that they can meet the comfort of their body in a different way. And then finally, it is important to honor what our body needs to feel comfortable, even at the expense of not pleasing other people. This lesson, still working on for myself. I know it's a really big one for my clients. This compliance nature of our society, undoing years of compliance training is really hard, but it's really important to interoception growth. So some of the things we're working on, like we shouldn't need permission to take a break. We shouldn't need to seek out a break or comfort in a way that is deemed appropriate by other people. We should be able to feel free to be ourselves and seek what we uniquely need for comfort within our bodies. We should never need to earn our comfort. It shouldn't be withheld until we do a demand or complete a demand of someone else. And we should never need to apologize for dysregulation. And that last one is such a hard thing for many of my clients because they have been programmed in these compliance models to feel that their dysregulation is a purposeful or a big problem behavior, when it's actually their body's natural automatic response to feeling unsafe in the world and in their bodies. And so it's important, and this is hard. Maybe it's easy for you. I hope it's easier for you. It's hard for me to move through and honor what my body needs, even when I might not be pleasing someone else. So that was our lessons that we have learned. I hope that all of what we've learned to date is helpful to you. Just a couple of things before turning it over for Q&A. We have monthly live online courses like today. Everyone gets access to the recording for 2 weeks. We have some really exciting topics coming up next year. Our January course is all about eating disorders and autism, and I'll be joined by my friend Kim Clary, who's a fellow OT. She's also autistic and is in recovery for an eating disorder, excuse me. February, we're talking about interoception and adults. And 2 of my OT friends, Emily Peelgrain and Jessica Spencer, will be joining me. They are doing a lot of work in the adult chronic pain and chronic health space and doing awesome stuff with interoception. So we'll be talking about that. In March, I'll be joined by my friend Anna Vanderhage, and we'll be talking about using interoception-based work in a variety of school settings. Anna is from Canada and doing a lot of really awesome work in the schools with interoception. April, we'll be doing a course on adapting interoception-based supports for non-speaking learners. We'll be doing that through a couple case studies, and I'll be joined by my friend Judy Endo, who is a licensed clinical social worker and is also autistic. May, topic is to be determined, but I'll be joined by my friend, Dr. Mona Delahook, and we'll be talking about her new book, Brain Body Parenting, and the relationship between interoception and her work. And then finally, our last course of 2022 is sensory comfort and safety with Greg Santucci, who is a fellow OT and doing really awesome stuff. We also have a couple different things in the work. We have a new book coming out. There are 50 mini IA builders. We sought out to come up with 50, but we have probably 75. So it could be like 100 mini IA builders. So that new book will be coming out next year. Our third edition of the Comprehensive Assessment of IA is out and available just this week. And then finally, you're the first to hear about this, but in the fall of 2022, we are looking to open a membership site. We've been asked by so many people to go deeper into this work. So we'll be offering group coaching, live Q&A, case studies, strategy demonstrations. I have a vodcast, which is a video podcast that will be offering exclusive access to the members of that group. So stay tuned for details of that. If you want tons of free resources on my website. So if you want to take a deeper dive, my website is kelly-mahler.com. And we also have a Facebook group that has like over 20,000 people from all over the world. It's called Interoception, the Eighth Sensory System. If you have questions after you leave this course, great place to go. Incredibly supportive group of people. I know many of you listening are a part of that group, and we're so thankful to everyone there. So I will turn it over to questions. I'm going to invite one of my teammates, Allison, to join me. She's been watching for your questions. Hi, Allison.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome. Should we get going with the first question?
I think that would be great.
Alrighty. So the first question, quite a few people actually had a question about this topic, so I think it's a great one. Someone asked, do you have any suggestions for kids that are nonverbal who might not yet have any solid way to communicate language? And then kind of a part B to that question is offering visuals a way of kind of assuming their experience.
Okay, so first part of that question, there's a lot of different things you can be doing, and it really depends on each client. But talking just out loud about the way your body feels is a great way to start to just introduce some interoception-based work. Many times we know from the reports of older autistic people that are non-speakers, they are soaking in a lot more than we realize. So talking out loud about the way your body is feeling during daily activities can be something really useful. Also thinking about how do they best learn in other areas? Does a high degree of visual supports, does that facilitate their success? And then thinking about how you could include that in some simple interoception-based work. The other thing, I don't know how old, depending on how old and where they're at in development, but a precursor of interoception is also, do they know their body parts? That's another place to start. Like we want them to know, like, these are my hands, these are my feet, this is my mouth, before we can invite them to start noticing the way that those body parts feel. So hopefully that'll get you started. We also have that live online course that we're doing in April, all about this work for non-speaking learners.
Awesome. So the next question, again, a few people had this question. What measure of IA skill is used in research, and kind of how do you measure success with IA?
That's a great question. Okay, one of the highest or the most debated topics in interoception right now is how to best assess interoception, and no one has the right answer. And so we have our assessment. It's our best attempt at measuring something that is so subjective. But in science, in like research studies, one of the most popular ways to measure interoception is hooking a research participant up to a heartbeat monitor and inviting them to count how many times their heart beats in a certain duration of time. And then they compare the participant's answer to what is measured on the monitor. And if that person's a close match, they're deemed as having clear interoceptive awareness. And if it's not a match, they're deemed as having less clear inner awareness. There's a lot of flaws with that. So how do you measure success, in my opinion, as an OT, is think about why are you offering the interoception-based supports? So is it to get gains in toileting? Is it to empower a learner with better self-regulation? And then measuring the outcomes of the interoception work that you're offering. What benefits is that person having on a daily basis?
So the next question is, how do you teach what emotions are if you are not labeling them? Thinking of learners with limited or emerging verbal language.
Well, this is something I'm pondering. Do they even need to know emotion words? I don't know if anyone has the answer to that. So is it possibly, this is something that maybe we'll have in best practices version next year, but is it possibly more meaningful for them to understand their body signal? Like, oh, this means this feeling for me is my hands are cold, and then matching that with the strategy. Like when my hands feel this way, I need to put my mittens on. Or when my hands feel tight, that's a sign that maybe I need to get my deep pressure vest, rather than convoluting it with the emotion word. Again, we don't know if that's the right or wrong answer, but I think sometimes the emotion words can get a little murky for some of our early learners. For some of our older learners, we still start with the body signals, and then we help them use their body signals and their understanding to give emotion words meaning. So when I notice this set of feelings in my body, what does it mean for me? Maybe the racing heart and the tight hands for me means I'm getting overwhelmed. So really helping them to still start at the body signal level, noticing the way their body feels, and then helping them use that as clues to their own emotions.
So the next question is, how do the IA builders work with children with LD or low cognition?
That's a good question. Again, highly dependent on each client, but thinking about how are you teaching them in other ways? What strategies promote successful learning for them, and then thinking about how you can use that information to adapt the IA builders. And for some of my clients, we are starting at really simple, slow levels. In fact, excuse me, for even some of my older clients that can speak to communicate, they report time and time again that the slower we go with this work, the more successful it is for them. So I don't think you can ever go too slow. So like one of my clients, we have been working on noticing the different ways that his hands can feel for a few months now. And this is just our team being very hopeful that hopefully that understanding eventually will empower him with some information, some self-understanding to help him begin to self-regulate. Because when this is our best guess, and we could be dead wrong, but when he starts to get upset, we see him start squeezing his hands really fast. So we're trying to build awareness of that in play-based ways outside of when he's dysregulated, and helping him to become more aware of the way his hands are feeling, and using that as a clue that, ooh, like maybe this is when I could start to self-regulate.
Great. So the next question is, how do you provide services if you are supporting someone who has difficulty with following instructions and or sitting still, etc., if not using a compliance-based intervention?
Using an interoception regulation approach. So going back to those 3 best practices is so important, and visiting them. Those 3 best practices do not require high degrees of cognition in your client. To be able to offer proactive co-regulation support is on us and our cognition, figuring out what that client uniquely needs to feel safe and regulated in their body. I see this as the missing piece for so many of our learners, that we are not taking enough time to do our best detective work to figure out what do they need in this moment from us to be more regulated. That challenging behavior, that not following the rules, almost always is due to underlying dysregulation. They're communicating something to us that they feel unsafe, that they feel dysregulated. So what can we do to promote more feelings of regulation and safety? So really thinking about that mutual relationship, so key. So entering their world, playing the way they want to play, doing the things they want to do, instead of the compliance is always about like, how do I get you to do what I want you to do? So we need that precursor stuff in first, that we need the proactive regulation, we need the mutual relationship and the trauma informed.
So the next question is, I love what you were saying about assuming their emotion and being curious instead. I know you said this questioning shouldn't be done in a meltdown. So how do you suggest empathizing in the middle of or at the beginning of a meltdown?
Well, I guess that's very different depending on what each client needs. Most of my clients just want me to be quiet. they like, so, and I don't want to overgeneralize this because someone else could need something very different. But for the most part, just getting quiet, just zipping our lip, is that the saying? Just, not talking. Some of my clients, they want me to keep a close presence. They need to feel like they have someone there with them in that moment. If you ask a person that can share with you what a meltdown or a shutdown can be like, it can feel so scary. So some of my clients need to feel me close to them, supported. Others, they need me to get 100 feet back. They need to feel space. They need to feel that they have their own place to work through their meltdown or shutdown. And so really you have to get to know what that learner needs in that situation. But most part, it is like just no more demands on that person, no talking. Can you decrease anything about the sensory environment for that person, whether it's like turning off the lights or reducing all extra noises in the environment and just getting low and slow. So just learning what your client needs uniquely, but generally speaking, just reducing all demands and including sensory demands.
So this is another topic that a few different people asked about. So I'm just going to use this question to cover it. The school I work at and the region educational psychologist requires our school to use only zones of regulation to deal with the difficulties you describe. Is this appropriate, or what is a better approach? And how can our teachers and teaching learning assistants be trained? So quite a few people asked actually about zones of regulation.
Okay, I think it's a great question. I'm friends with Leah Kuipers, who is the author of the Zones of Regulation. And in my opinion, I'm probably biased, but I think Leah has changed. She's been so instrumental in changing our understanding of these observable behaviors and helping us to see them through a dysregulation lens. And Leah herself talks about interoception and how interoception is a precursor to being able to identify what zone you're in the moment. You have to notice and understand your body signals, and that is what helps you to identify what zone you're in. And we hear this from so many people. So many learners out there are memorizing awesome programs like the zones, or they memorize like a stress thermometer, or they might memorize the alert program, which is sometimes called How Does Your Engine Run? But then they memorize it, they learn it, but they can't put it into practice in real life. And what's happening many times is that they don't have the interoceptive awareness, that foundation piece, understanding the way their body feels to help drive the success of those programs. And so offering the zones might not necessarily be wrong. It's just, how do you convince your system that you're working within that you need to just put that on pause? It's awesome you have that in place, but how do you rewind just a little bit and help your learners gain the foundation that they need to be successful? And that's all about the interoceptive awareness.
So the next question is, do you have recommendations for children who just say good or okay when you ask how they feel during an interoception exercise? And how can you kind of get more out of them without speaking for them?
Yeah, that's a great question because I'm smiling because my clients will give me a lot of these neutral or generalized answers quite a bit. And so we still honor and validate their experience. And so they might, like one of my clients the other day, she's like, this makes my hands feel fine. This makes my hands feel fine. This makes my hands feel fine. And I'm like, oh, this is great, good word. But, I always read my clients. For her, I knew we had such a good relationship and we were having a good time. It appears she was having a good time. She wanted more and more. So I felt like I could push her a little bit. So I said, okay, so this made your hands feel fine. That made your hands feel fine. And what else? So we still validated her original response, but I wanted to see if she could give me a little more. And we have a visual support called the descriptor menu. And that's just a list of words. Sometimes it's paired with pictures of different words you can use to describe the way your hands can feel. Our learners are not required to pick a word from that menu. In fact, we tell them that specifically. You can use your own words. But for her, she needed a little bit more of a language support. And that was just something I was going off of as my gut as her OT. And so I said, okay, your hands felt fine. But is there any other word that you're noticing here? Any other feeling you're noticing from the descriptor menu? And that helped her to be able to say, yeah, my hands feel fine. And they also feel cold. And so she was able to give me 2 different words. She still had her experience honored. I was not labeling her experience, but I was encouraging her to give me something else. Sometimes I do that and it backfires and the learner gives me another word from the menu, but to me, curiosity, I'm like, are they just giving me an answer to shut me up? So you want to tuck that away in your curious brain, even if you're encouraging them to give you a second word. They just might be someone that needs a lot more repetition with this work to be able to really sort out how their body is feeling.
So the next question is, can you give more details about or a description of co-regulation?
Okay, great question. I think I want to do a whole course on co-regulation. So this is a good one. I could probably talk for 2 hours, but I'll hold myself back. So co-regulation is really what we're all born into this world needing. It's where we are born into this world relying on the caregivers in our life to meet our body's needs. So we're born, many of us in this world, noticing discomfort. We might not know what that discomfort means. It might mean that we need food or that we're cold or we need some kind of social warmth. We don't understand that discomfort within our body, but many of us cry, and that is what alerts our caregivers, oh, I need to step in, and our caregiver needs to offer that comfort, that regulation. So that co-regulation is where we're relying on other people in our life to provide us with support, to provide us with what our body needs for regulation. As we learn and grow, many of us learn more about how our body is feeling. We learn more about what promotes comfort within our bodies. And we get to a place where we can self-regulate and meet our own body's needs. That interoceptive awareness, being able to learn and understand our inner signals, is what provides us with a bridge from co-regulation over to self-regulation. That being said, it doesn't mean that many of us still, even if we are fairly decent self-regulators, we still rely on co-regulation. I know when I have a really bad day, I rely on my husband. I need to vent to him. I need to feel heard and seen. I need him to meet my needs. And so that co-regulation piece is something that we many times might revisit. But for a lot of our learners that are experiencing these IA extremes, how many of them do we expect self-regulation? We expect them to, and I see this IEP goals. The student will request a break independently. The student will seek out a sensory strategy independently. The student will use a coping skill when upset. That's all self-regulation. And those are unfair expectations on that student if they don't have the interoceptive awareness that is needed to move them from requiring full co-regulation to a place of being able to begin to self-regulate.
All right. What are some tips for practically incorporating treatment sessions and increasing carryover at home? So for example, this person says they try to involve the caregivers as best as possible, but struggle with providing enough information for home and how this work can be continued at home.
Yeah, I guess it depends on your setting. Like if you're in an outpatient setting, inviting the caregivers to participate in your session can be really helpful. And I think before I went a little bit too far ahead there. First of all, I think we need to be very clear on considering the interoceptive awareness of our caregivers, that for many of them, they might be coming to the table with their own set of trauma, maybe with their own set of dysregulation, their own IA extremes, and really taking that into account and how all of these pieces fit together. And so if you are sending interoception work home and that caregiver might really want to support their child, but they don't have the inner resources to be able to do so because they're unclear in their own inner experience, we need to really think about that. And I don't know the answers to all of these questions. I'm actually in a study group. We meet twice a month to talk about this exact topic. Like, where do we start with this interoception work? Do we start at the caregiver level? Do we start at the teenage level before teenagers even grow and start to become adults and become parents? Like, we don't know where to start all this work, but just consider, what is that caregiver's interoceptive experience? How do you match what you're suggesting them to do at home to where they might be at interoceptively? How do we make it as easy as possible on them? That interoception daily activity list is really helpful for some of my families because they're all times that are naturally occurring in their child's daily routines that can be really great times to invite their child to notice the way their body feels. So it's things that they're already doing. They just need to see them and use them as an interoception activity. And the other practical tip I have, and what I do with a lot of my families, is teach them how to use interoception talk. We call this IA on the fly in the curriculum, but what that really is about is inviting caregivers to talk out loud about the way their body is feeling, and then eventually inviting their children to notice the way their own body feels during daily activities. And we have it's pretty structured the way we do it in the curriculum, but you don't have to be so structured about it. Just educating caregivers about interoception and how can they just better talk about interoception in their home.
Okay, so understanding that everyone is unique and there is no wrong way to feel, how can you address unsafe processing? So for example, a child who wears a tank top in freezing cold weather and their skin looks cold and has goosebumps, but perhaps it's just not processing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that goes back to the focus area experiments and giving lots of opportunities in safe and playful ways of beginning to notice how your skin feels and getting more understanding about that. We did a really fun study last year, research study using the curriculum in a school for autistic students. And it was in a very cold climate. And one of the things that they were working on was teaching their students the difference between when your hands feel cold and when your hands feel warm, and linking when your hands feel cold to putting on mittens, linking when your feet feel cold to putting on warm socks. Like, so really giving them that concrete link between when your feet feel this way, then that's what we're talking about. It's not just like this compliance model where it's 30 degrees outside, you must wear a jacket. We're giving them really more concrete understanding of how their body feels and why that's important.
What is the best way to approach families who believe that their child has behavioral issues when you believe it is sensory or interoception related?
Okay. My first instinct to that question is I don't have the best answer here, because this is something that I am dealing with on a daily basis. Overriding this compliance-driven system is not easy. And some days I have to admit, I feel like a failure. So just education, gentle education, really developing that mutual relationship with the caregivers first before we start, suggesting differences in mindset. Sometimes this is so dependent on my caregivers, and sometimes letting them watch a video of what it could be like there's a lot of adult self-advocates out there talking about sensory dysregulation and what that experience is like. Sometimes it can be really helpful for them to hear that from a person with lived experience, and that can be like an aha moment, like, oh my gosh, this isn't my child doing this on purpose. It's my child's neurological experience in the world. I think these parents need, and I'm speaking to parents I know that are here too, parents are doing the best they can. And I don't know what it's like around the world, but in the US, our pediatricians are trained to recommend compliance-based approaches and compliance-based therapy when your child has a quote unquote challenging behavior. Pediatricians are not trained in dysregulation. They're not trained to identify the signs of it and get your child the support you need. So these parents are trusting and listening to their advice from these medical professionals, and they're doing the best they can. So as an OT, really just educating my parents in whatever way I feel it could be a match for them, whether it's letting them listen to someone with lived experience or just giving them a little bit more science behind dysregulation, can be very helpful, and just being gentle in their shift.
So a couple of people have asked about group settings. So just an umbrella question. Do you have any tips for doing interoception work in a group setting? Is it effective? How can you do it?
My favorite way of doing interoception-based work, it's not always a luxury I have, but whenever possible, interoception work can be so much fun as a group, and our curriculum is set up to be easily used one-on-one or in a group setting. Group work really concretely normalizes this work. It's good for all of us. And it also concretely shows that we all have different inner experiences. So it can really reduce a lot of the anxiety that some of my clients have for fear that they're going to be wrong, or that they're not going to be feeling the right way that other people have told them. So when we do all of these different, I keep referring to focus area experiments because that's what we taught in this course. We have a lot of IA builders, but when we're offering these focus area experiments, inviting the group to try them, and it's so much fun to watch the differences that each person experiences as a result of the experiments. It's a lot of fun, and it has so many other benefits. Like, I've had some clients that might not want to participate in the activities, and again, we honor that. It's never a requirement, but a lot of times when they see other kids trying them and they're having fun, and they see, oh, okay, that might be safe for me to try too, it sometimes encourages their participation because they want to be a part of the fun.
Okay. Is there any evidence connecting interoception dysregulation and difficulty with executive functioning? And then kind of a part B, would you happen to have any advice for trying interoception work for decreasing things like impulsivity?
So research looking at executive function and IA, I don't believe there's a lot. I guess it depends on your definition of executive functioning. If we break down executive functioning, some of the elements of it, like emotion regulation, there's a lot of research linking interoception and emotion regulation. What this research shows is that we need to be clear on how we're feeling in order to manage how we're feeling successfully. In terms of the impulsivity, again, I don't know if there's a study out there. I have not personally seen it. When I first started interoception work, I had all the studies memorized, like back in like the early, like in 2011, 2012, but now there's so many studies coming out on a daily basis. I can't possibly memorize them all. So go to Google Scholar, search interoception and impulsivity and see if there's any research out there looking at it. In my clinical experience, I've seen a lot of improvements in impulsivity. Again, just being naturally more aware of how your body is feeling and what it's doing can buy that little space or that little time for that client to not be so quick to respond.
Let me see. We have a couple of questions asking about behaviors that someone might be doing that could be harmful to themselves or others. So how might you help a child, for example, during a meltdown who cannot be given space because they have self-harming behaviors? Or how can you help a child who might do things like biting or kicking?
Mm-hmm. Well, safety is always paramount. So whatever we need to do to keep a child or an adult safe is 100% what we should be doing. But after that moment, think about what do we need to get better at doing to prevent those meltdowns from occurring. I know that it's never going to be perfect. We're never going to prevent every single meltdown or shutdown from happening. We're never going to stop every single self-injurious behavior, but oftentimes those things are happening because we are not providing adequate supports across environments. So really thinking about how can we get better at increasing the proactive regulation supports. So does that person have frequent access and is encouraged to do the things that they need to do to help their body be regulated? Are we providing enough supports? Like, is their world predictable enough? Do we need to increase visual supports? So just really thinking about what could possibly they be communicating, which I know is a really hard thing. But what could they possibly be communicating to us through that self-injurious behavior or through those frequent meltdowns? And how can we get better at trying different supports? And one thing I should say first and foremost is many times we need to rule out any underlying medical causes of self-injurious behavior. That should always be our step one, because many times that could be a communication that that person could be experiencing some kind of internal discomfort or pain as a result of a medical condition.
Okay, the next question is, let's see. I see the terms interoception and neuroception in this area of work. Are these the same or how do they vary?
I guess that depends on who you ask. To me, I'm about to get sciencey for just a second, but in interoception research, there are two branches of interoception. We have the implicit branch of interoception. And so that part of interoception is working beneath our level of consciousness. Those interoception receptors monitoring the way our body is feeling. And when there's an imbalance detected, it alerts our brain to help set off a chain of automatic reactions that regulate our body. So maybe those receptors are picking up that our glucose levels are too low, or our ion concentration is not right, or maybe our liver needs to release more enzymes. And so those are things that are happening beneath our level of consciousness. So that implicit side of interoception is continually monitoring for threats to our survival, threats to our internal survival, like glucose or ion concentration, but it's also monitoring the external world unconsciously, just watching for signs of danger and safety. And Dr. Stephen Porges, who talks about neuroception in the polyvagal theory, he talks about neuroception as our unconscious process of monitoring for signs of threat and danger. So to me, if you're asking me, neuroception is a part of the implicit side of interoception. It's a small part of interoception. We, of course, have the second side of interoception, the second branch, which is our conscious awareness of how our body feels, consciously aware of when our body needs food or when our body is getting overheated or our body needs some kind of emotional comfort. So we have those two branches, and neuroception fits in that implicit branch. It's a small piece of this big puzzle we call interoception.
Right. Okay, and the next question is, can children with interoceptive difficulties perhaps present differently at home and at school?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That can be for a lot of different reasons. I mean, just think about that from your own perspective. And does your body feel different in different settings? Also going back to thinking about the environment and how that promotes our ability to attend to our body. So a certain environment might be more overwhelming to a person. So maybe thinking about school, like school could be, from a sensory perspective, a really overwhelming environment. Lots of sounds and smells and sights. And so that person's attention might just naturally be pulled outside of their body, vigilant on their environment. And they have little resources to pay attention to how their body is feeling. Then on the other hand, maybe at home in their safe space, they have a lot more attention to pay to their bodies. They are able to shift their attention because they feel safe in that environment. So that's one of the many reasons why you could see very different interoception experiences across different environments.
Thank you. Is there a checklist or some kind of screening type tool to establish if a person has interoception challenges, or how can you know that that's what is going on and kind of what needs to be focused on?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it gets back to the assessment dilemma and how do we best assess interoception? There are a lot of signs that make me curious about a person's interoceptive awareness. They're not definitive, like if you see this, there's definitely an IA extreme present. So things like toileting difficulties, feeding and eating difficulties, emotion regulation difficulties. Like if a person's experiencing a lot of meltdowns, shutdowns, I would be curious about their IA experience. Things like sleep challenges, I would be curious about their IA. Also things like not noticing when they're hot or cold, or pain differences and the way they respond to pain. All of those would be indicators that I would want to be more curious about interoceptive awareness. In our third edition of the assessment tool, we do have a caregiver questionnaire that can be useful at gathering more information about that person's IA. Again, it's our best guess, but it can be a really nice format for thinking through some of these things at a deeper level.
So the next question, a lot of people were also asking about this. Have you had any success with people with restrictive eating or eating disorders, other extreme food restrictions?
Yes, lots of success incorporating interoception for clients that have eating disorders. In fact, we're doing an online course just on that topic. In January, I'll be joined by my colleague, Kelli, who is autistic, and she also is in recovery from an eating disorder. And interoception was a humongous part of her healing process, and really sorting through not only like thinking beyond noticing when you're hungry, you're full, you're thirsty, but thinking beyond those eating feelings and just thinking about learning about what your body starts to feel like when you're getting dysregulated. Because a lot of times eating disorders can develop for a lot of different reasons, and many times for individuals, many times for neurodivergence, they can develop for reasons that we don't really consider. Many times eating disorders can develop as an attempt to self-regulate. At first, it's a maladaptive, harmful attempt to self-regulate. And then as that person becomes more and more malnourished, that eating disorder thinking can take over. So this is a really important question. I'm so glad you're asking about it. Interoception is a really big piece of the healing process for people that have eating disorders, both even if they're neurodivergent or they're not. There's tons of research out there looking at it. And if you want to learn more, in my opinion, Kim is the best teacher on the topic. So check out, we have a free blog on it coming out in January, but also our online course.
Okay, let's see. What are some strategies we can use for individuals who are afraid to explore their bodies in order to help them kind of ease into it?
I appreciate your question so much, and that you are picking up on the fact that they feel uneasy and that you want to provide this work in a comfortable way. So go back and revisit those first 3 best practices and consider, is there enough co-regulation in place? Is your relationship solid? Do you have a mutual therapeutic alliance with them? And thinking about all the trauma-informed principles as well. I would just revisit those. I continually revisit those myself. I'm continually reflecting back. Like if something doesn't go quite right with a client, then I go back and I'm like, okay, what do I need to do better next time? And so the fact that you're even reflecting on that and asking that question is so important. And I just encourage you to continually keep asking. Go back through some of our slides too, like maybe it could be even more playful. Maybe you need to have a little bit more structure in place. Maybe they feel like it's too unpredictable what we're offering. So the handouts that we gave you, the one for adapting the interoception work, can be really useful, hopefully, to you as well.
And how do you know when to move between body parts? For example, how can you know how long to stay on the hands?
Yeah, no rule here. Take the lead of the learner. If you feel like they're really connecting, that they're noticing the different ways their hands can feel in a wide variety of activities, they might be maybe identifying a wide range of sensations in that body part, then you can probably feel safe enough to move on to the next body part. However, I've moved on in the past to the next body part and realized I moved on too quickly, and that's not like that big of a deal. You can always go back. So there's not like, if you make a mistake, like there's no rule. Like you can go back and revisit and maybe do more focus area experiments for the hands, and then also add in the feet or the mouth or the heart or the bladder, whatever you're doing. So just some general points there of when to move on, but it might not be applicable to every single learner.
Okay. How do you differentiate, or do you, between interoception and other senses like touch, proprioception, example, focus area experiments with hands or looking at temperature? Isn't that touch? And is hand washing proprioception?
Whenever, in my mind, this could be proven wrong eventually in science, but in my mind, whenever we're talking about the way that something is making our body feel, that's interoception in nature. So when you're washing your hands, how are your hands feeling when you're washing your hands? Like, how does that water make your hands feel? If it's cold, if it's warm, if it's wet, it's dry. So when we're talking about how do your hands feel during that activity, that's interoception. When we talk about putting your hand on an ice pack and talking about how does that ice pack feel, like to me, like that ice pack is, the feel of that ice pack is cold. Then that's the tactile system. So when we're talking about how does our body feel, that's interoception to me. I know there's a very fine line, and there are some scientists looking at how all of our senses play together, and we just don't know enough yet about it.
The next question is, do you ever say what you are feeling when doing a focus area experiment? For example, do you say, my hands feel cold?
Depends on the situation. If we're in a group setting and everyone's taking turns sharing how their hands feel and we're celebrating that we all have different opinions, yes, I do. Am I labeling out loud the way my hands feel if I'm one-on-one with a client? And that might take that to be the only answer and the correct answer because they're a very concrete thinker, then I probably wouldn't say out loud how my hands are feeling. So I really would think critically about, why do I want to say out loud how my hands are feeling? If it's to show concretely that we all have different experiences, then yes. If you don't have access to a group, I try to include like the whole family so that while everyone's trying it, including my client, we can all share our different experiences. That way I can say out loud how my hands are feeling, but the client hears many other answers as well. Or if you're like in a classroom, I'll try to pull in like extra staff people to join us so that we can all share in our experience. And then I think we have time for one more question.
Sure. So the next question up is, do you think it might be a good idea for schools to group students who have similar interoception profiles rather than disabilities, for example, autism-specific classrooms?
Wow, that is a fascinating question, one that I've never thought of about before. So I have to say I would have to ponder that. Yeah, and it's such an interesting thought. I don't know how we would even logistically do it because I think it would be hard to start sifting through and understanding. I mean, it's a lot of work to understand each person's inner experience. And the fact that interoception is good for all of us, maybe I wouldn't want to group them together because we're working really hard with many different school systems out there to use interoception supports and the interoception curriculum as a tier 1 intervention, which means that everyone in the school gets this work because it's good for all of us. So I'm not sure 100% on that answer, but I'm going to go with interoception is good for all. So I would have to know more about why you would want to put them together in groups. But Allison, thank you for sorting through all the questions. I know there was a lot of them coming in, so many good questions. And so we know that we didn't get to all of your questions and they're all very important to us. So please feel free to post them to the Interoception Facebook group. There's a lot of people on there willing to answer questions and provide support. You can also always email us at info@kelly-mahler.com. I wouldn't have been able to get through this question and answers without you, Allison, so thank you. Appreciate you so much. And thank you to Barb for monitoring the chat and providing all the links, and Zach for providing all the tech support for today. And most of all, thank you to every single one of you that attended live or in our recording. And thank you for your willingness to join us and learn more about interoception. So please stay in touch, everyone. Goodbye until next time.